The surprise attack at Pearl Harbor.
Smoke, flames, and terror.
The enemy gave no warning, but there was a warning from two men.
This was the first operation of American radar in a battle.
What did Privates Joseph Lockard and George Elliott see? Why didn't anyone believe them? Coming up, the shocking answer in this special edition of Warriors in Their Own Words. 6 a.m., December 7th, 1941. For 12 days, the Japanese First Air Fleet has sailed through stormy seas under strict radio silence. Now, they're 230 miles north of the Hawaiian island of Oahu, ready to launch a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor. What the commanders don't know is that their pilots will be flying straight into an invisible net, a technology Imperial Japan does not yet possess, but which the Americans have already begun to implement. Radar. Specifically, a mobile radar unit set up at Opana, some 30 miles north of Pearl Harbor. One of the radar men is a 19-year-old private, Joseph Lockard.
I was one of the technical people, so why I was selected, I guess because of my technical competence, I don't know. I like to think so. We were Signal Company Aircraft Warning Hawaii. We had received 6 mobile units, mobile 270B units. These were located at various points around the island. The one at Opana was not put there until November of 1941. In the operating van, there was an oscilloscope with a 5-inch tube. It was black and white and gave only distance. It had spikes in the grass, as we call it, which indicated targets. The radar equipment, while primitive, was very good equipment. We felt that we were on the leading edge of technology.
Some of the island brass are less enthusiastic.
The equipment was so new that I suspect that knowledge of it and its capabilities were not really widespread. I do feel that there were many in the service who didn't believe that the equipment was much more than an elaborate toy. Sunday, December 7th, 1941, we had a schedule from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. The Air Corps in those days had morning flights, dawn patrols out. This would give us something to practice with. 3 or 4 sightings would probably be about as many as we'd get. It's difficult to convey an image of the pre-war military establishment. There was a lot of spit and polish and all of that sort of thing, but the United States hadn't been in a war since when? World War I, and it was a very relaxed atmosphere, I would say. Nobody on the island was expecting an attack.
The first wave of 183 planes has been heading for Pearl Harbor since 6:10 a.m. Lockard is scheduled to turn off his equipment at 7, but he keeps it on for a few more minutes.
George Elliott was a new man in our company. He'd only been with us a couple of weeks, and he needed training on the equipment. So we decided to keep the equipment operating past the 7 o'clock time period to give him some practice while we were waiting for the truck to come and take us back to our base camp. Shortly after 7, we got this indication of what seemed to be a very large flight. In fact, it was the largest display I'd ever seen. I kept tracking it, and George was plotting it on the board, and decided that maybe we better tell somebody about it. George called on the landline and got Joe McDonald, the operator, switchboard just outside Honolulu. He left the switchboard and looked around the information center and finally located a young Air Force officer and was told, okay, forget it. We continued to plot it. We're impressed by the size of this thing. And so I called back again, and this time I spoke directly to the officer. I tried to convince him that, hey, we have something outstanding here. Somebody ought to know about it. But again, we were put off. And again, don't worry about it. I forget what he said exactly, but that was the intent. He felt that it may have been a flight of B-17s that were coming in from the West Coast that were due that morning. But this was coming directly out of the north, which seemed to be a strange way to come from the western coast of the United States.
Lockard and Elliott's initial report is dismissed at 7:06, with the first wave 113 miles north of Pearl Harbor. Their follow-up report is dismissed at 7:15, when the first wave is 92 miles away. That's when Admiral Yamamoto launches the second wave of 160 planes. Lockard and Elliott keep monitoring the spikes in the grass until about 7:40, when the surrounding hills block the radar signal. The station is shut down, just as the first wave pilots sight the North Shore. The attack is presented here in a combination of archival film and wartime recreations. The first bombs drop at 7:55.
I was in bed asleep. Being a Sunday morning, I wasn't even going to get up and go to breakfast. However, that changed very quickly.
And the first thing that popped in my mind was, what in the world is the Army doing up on Sunday morning holding drills?
We thought it was our own planes, and it wasn't until one of the planes pulled up and we could see the meatball, we called it, the red sun on the bottom of the wing, that we knew that it was Japanese.
When we arrived back at our base with the truck returning us from the radar unit, we could see the smoke rising in huge billows over the harbor. We could not see the harbor, of course, because the Waianae Range is between where we were and the harbor itself. We were too far away to hear the explosions. We could see airplanes flying around. When we heard what had happened, I immediately knew what we had seen. There was no question in my mind that, yes, that was indeed the attack coming in that we had witnessed on the oscilloscope.
Target 1, the planes on the ground, so the Americans can't launch a counterattack. Mission accomplished. On to the main objective. Battleship Row. Five torpedoes hit the USS Oklahoma, which capsizes in 20 minutes.
But it kept going over in my mind, how could the Japanese have the nerve to attack the country as powerful as we are, and how did they get in here? Just before I abandoned ship, I felt there's a good chance that it's going to be my time to die in the next moment or two.
West Virginia had been hit by, it turned out, 7 torpedoes. And West Virginia was in terrible shape. They had a fearful problem down below because of the torpedoes that hit her. Why she didn't roll over, nobody knows, but she settled straight down.
It took us about 11 minutes to actually settle to the bottom. I dove over the ship and swam back over there where that tree is. And then I came back to this area here because there were so many people in the water. So we dove back into the water. We were covered with oil anyway. So we went to the water. The guys that were floating was hollering for help. We brought them ashore. Some of them we laid right along here that were wounded. We picked up all of those guys, and then they had a bomb truck come in, and then they were taking them to the officers club, which they converted into a kind of an emergency dispensary. Then the ones that were dead, we just brought them up and kind of left them along the beach here so that they would take them away later.
As we were coming out now, we had been hit on the port side with a torpedo, so we were pretty far down the bow. We had counter-flooded starboard side forward because of a fire in order to save the anti-aircraft magazines. Admiral Train was worried that the ship would block the harbor. Every time he watched us, he'd see us going deeper in the water, and he just was convinced we were going to sink. So he ordered us to run aground in order to keep us from sinking in the channel. Of course, that's what the Japanese hoped we would sink in the channel too, because we would have blocked the harbor and then nothing had gotten out.
Just after 8, a bomb blows up the Battleship Arizona's powder magazine.
Well, the Arizona was just, you could hardly see anything. It was just nothing but smoke, flames, and terror. We were conscious that the foremast was tilted forward, but mainly it was just terrible smoke, terrible flame.
At 8:54, the second wave attacks. Over the next 51 minutes, the Americans are able to scramble together a defense. 29 Japanese planes are shot down, but for the United States, it's too little, too late.
I never could understand why they weren't equipped with troop transports to land on the island, because an organized troop effort at that time would have taken the island.
But what would have happened if Lockard and Elliott's report hadn't been ignored?
If they'd have taken our first report, they'd had almost an hour, or 3/4 of an hour certainly anyway, notice. What they could have done with that is anybody's guess. Certainly they certainly couldn't have got the battleships out of the harbor, but maybe they could have manned the anti-aircraft artillery. Maybe they could have moved the planes around so they weren't all lined up like sitting ducks. Maybe they could have got a few more planes in the air. Of course, they would have been greatly outnumbered in any case. Maybe they could have saved a few lives. I have no way of knowing that.